concept that is alluded to in the philanthrocapitalism and reflected in the title of this conference here today, the concept that business practices and corporations themselves can be a tool for social change, is something that I grew up believing in. I loved seeing my dad's advertisements in magazines or on billboards, because they were statements that he would tell my sisters and I all the time. What you stand for is more important than what you stand in, and to be aware is more important than what you wear. While today, businesses are increasingly feeling market pressure to sort of speak to social causes in their marketing campaigns, Kenneth Cole Productions actually was using marketing to spread awareness and actually generate funds for social causes way before there was a term for it. These are the causes that he lives. In fact, they're dinner table conversation. And also the witty and clever messaging is in fact his voice as well. We call it a pun disease that he contracted during his adolescence. But what fascinates me is just that this was something, and we often speak about this, but that this was something you came to realize, the fact that business had the potential to ultimately address larger societal issues. Why and how did you realize that when you were starting your business? Did you seek out, or did you find your social voice, or did it find you?
This has been an extraordinary journey for me. It wasn't, I should tell you, it wasn't this thoughtful, strategic pursuit that found its origins in business school. I guess by nature of it being an entrepreneur, which is a term that that I've come to embrace over the years of kind of figuring things out as you go along. What is the most creative way to get from point A to point B, and invariably committing all of the resources you need to, no more than the resources you need to, and how do you assess all the obstacles, variables, circumstances as you proceed in your journey and figure out what play. So in 1985, the company was young, probably in its infancy, a year or two old. I had started the business when I was 11. And I was in search of finding a relevant voice for the business. And in the early 80s, there was this public consciousness, this pervasive consciousness that we hadn't seen since the 60s. And it was in the form of mostly hunger. And it was Live Aid World Aid Hands Across America. And it was about hunger specifically in Ethiopia, ironically. And it dawned on me that there was this desire to connect to something bigger and more relevant and meaningful in our lives. And that made sense, and not that hunger in Ethiopia was unimportant, but it was so far away and so remote, and there were certain things so close to home that seemed and needed a voice, and specifically HIV/AIDS. The problem is nobody spoke about AIDS in those days because the stigma was so severe and so punishing, and if you did, you were perceived to be at risk, which meant that you were either Haitian, you were an IV drug user, or you were gay. And in the early 80s, none of that was socially embraced. And I knew that if I came out and I did this, that I would just, being a single male designer, that everybody would just assume I was Haitian. But maybe because I wasn't Haitian, I was comfortable kind of going down this road and talking about something that few were in ways that most wouldn't. And I spoke specifically about the fact that nobody was speaking about HIV/AIDS at the time, and that was the biggest obstacle, the most important obstacle that needed to happen. So this was a big message that I had taken on, and it became very personal very quickly. It was somewhat of a business initiative to start with, and it became very personal. And I joined the board of AMFAR in 1987, and I went on to become chairman in 2004, and I've been afforded the privilege of playing an important role with a very important organization. And AMFAR has gone on today to played a role in the 4 people that were recently announced cured of AIDS. Therefore, had a role in each of those 4, and 4 of the 6 drugs that are keeping millions of people alive today and far. Played a role in the initial funding of 4 of those 6 drugs. So it's very rewarding, and it became very personal, and that's kind of defined me, and it's become a very big part of business, what we do, the brand, and also its design.